Tonight, it's all about trust. Who has it, who's lost it, and the most difficult question, how do you get it back? Hello and welcome. Joining us tonight, someone who transforms lives by building trust, Jack Manning Bancroft.
I don't remember a time when the notion of a trustworthy politician wasn't a joke amongst my friends. As a 14-year-old, I wish this level of cynicism wasn't the norm amongst myself and my peers, but it is. Where are the young people of Australia supposed to place their trust when the people in power seem all too often to prioritise their own self-interests over what's best for the country?
Jack, you and your organisation have mentored a staggering number of young people. Who do you tell them they can trust?
I think that the part of the challenge with this conversation tonight is looking at how you frame trust and how we start that conversation. And when we label all politicians or all governments with the same descriptor, we're going to get ourselves into trouble. So when your friends make fun of politicians, maybe ask them who, and start to break it down, because there are a number of people who give their life to service, who give their life to leadership, school principals, teachers, mentors, guides, and it's very, very lonely leading. And so part of our responsibility, I think, absolutely hold our leaders accountable. But we also have to build that trust up as citizens and work out how we build bridges of understanding both ways. And I think that's what's really complex about tonight. I'm looking forward to listening to some of the other people's responses.
How do you start? If a young person says, I don't trust you, or I don't trust your group, what do you say?
Yeah, look, what's really fascinating about some of the really complex elements of a human life, when we think about the philosophical framework around the word trust, it's hard to find some of the ingredients. So if you've got a city of trust and you've got all these roads driving in towards it, maybe turning up regularly is one of the roads that drives in there. Maybe doing what you said you were going to do is another one. And it is complicated for us to work out what are those ingredients, because then when we understand the ingredients, then I think we can cast fairer judgments around whether our trust is being broken or not. What's our social contract with each other? What are we expecting people to do? Government, when we say the word government, I'm so stoked that, every Tuesday night, the garbage people come and pick up my garbage. Like, that's unreal. And that happens just seamlessly. And, my daughter can go to an early childhood centre and get great schooling and great support. So they're breaking down all the levers of government and making sure our analysis is really rich will help us find the art of the problem and then be able to unpack it, I think.
Simon McKeon.
I think there's a fair bit that goes into the absolute disruptive period we are having with reorganising what was, for a couple of hundred years, the fourth estate or the fourth power, which was the role of an independent, free journalism that could provide accountability and also a platform. So, Jackie, when you're talking about trust and trust us, or what I could cling to there was when you were saying honesty. Okay, so if honesty is a part of trust, then how do you communicate it? Because this has got to be the most watched platform for politicians to have an engaging, complex conversation. And when you reference Twitter, frankly, part of the challenges we're having is we've gone to 1 second appetites with ideas. You can't have complex conversations around that.
Well, that's why I've written opinion pieces, because I don't think you can respond in 1 sentence responses.
Well, you can't, unless you're Hemingway's 6-word story. If you're a really good writer.
30-second grabs, mate. 30-second grabs.
I think what we are starting to see, and there's a guy who wrote about it in 2011, published his Harvard case on it, and is that we're starting to see a connected fourth estate. We don't quite know what that's going to look like. So we see our role as a mentoring organisation to actually fill some of that void that's been dislocated, and to publish stories and to inquire and to try and understand what's going on behind the scenes. And I think you're seeing a real reordering of how information is shared. And at the moment, for the really big social media groups, there's as much in question for their responsibility for the current platform we have, because yes, there's question time, but I can tell you there's not many people my age, not many people in primary school, not many people in high school are tuning into question time. So there are platforms and communication which are eating at kids' brains. The phone is one of the most complex, addictive devices we've ever had invented in human history. It's changed the way our brain is working. So we're in a very, very disrupted, dislocated time, which comes back to the first question. The responsibility for all of us to start to be mentors, guides, philosophers, journalists, and try and be stronger in how we decipher and understand information becomes part of the challenge, primary school kids and the like as well. So I think you've got to acknowledge the time that we're in and how we can try and find solutions
But
within it.
how do things like those platforms mean that we're no longer listening to that knowledge and science-based learning?
Oh, it's pretty simple. Like, I used to sit down and have a conversation with someone, and so the teacher, for example, it was great. Like, I didn't get along with a lot of my teachers at school. I used to get in a fair bit of trouble. But I had to listen to whoever it was because they had access to the information for me to pass my tests. Now, in my pocket, see you later. I can go to YouTube, I can learn from 5,000 more adept experts in that field. That teachers don't have information to hold over as authority anymore. So traditional spaces, which were these really rich areas for encounter and conversation, have been completely discombobulated. And now we're in this process of reordering.
Great word. What do you make of seeing politicians within the same government having really different views on something like this?
Yeah, I was just thinking it'd be really cool if there was more space for, oh, I don't know. Or actually, I did think that, and then the art of this debate and discourse and complexity of evidence has actually turned my decision. That'd totally win my trust. And I think that's the piece that's the complex part of being a citizen in democracy, is that we have a set of behaviours, I think, that we can start to bring to people. And there's, like, climate change is absolutely going to be one of the most significant challenges we face as human beings. Add automation to the mix, 49% of the jobs in the States in the next 10 to 20 years under critical risk of being wiped out. So robots are coming, they're already here. And so we're in this complex, like unbelievably complex age. If you guys think you know the answers, then you're reading something that none of us else are. So to be able to actually go represent the complexity, show vulnerability in that leadership piece, I think is going to bring bridges closer together with the voters. And then for us, it's trying to encourage people to say, I got it wrong, and I'm still going to turn up tomorrow and do my job, because we're all unbelievably human and we're all fallible. And if we hold our politicians, our leaders, our principals, our presenters of television shows to be perfect, we'll always be disappointed.
Well, we know they aren't. Our next question tonight comes from Greg Bamber.
Thanks, Hamish. It's a great theme tonight. The issue of trust is so important in all organisations, including business, religious and educational organisations. After the banking, aged care and sexual abuse royal commissions, do such organisations now get it? How should organisations, for example, a big bank or an aged care provider, go about the hard task of rebuilding trust with its various stakeholders, yet at the same time continue with its regular operations?
I wonder what with get it, you know, when you say they get it. Like, because I sit on the other side of a lot of these, the CEOs and chairpeople of some of the big organisations, and absolutely there's a commitment to some social causes and to building that, you know, corporate social responsibility. When I see a world that accumulative wealth makes its way up to 8 white men, and 50% of that sits there to match the other 50% of the least wealthy people in the world, there's something fundamentally broken about the way we have wealth distribution and the way we have opportunity. And I think it's that maturity and that complexity. I'm really fascinated how much power the big groups are willing to let go, how much cash they're willing to let go from their profit margins to build a more equitable world where, you know, in our country, we don't have some of the worst living conditions in the world for our First Nations people. We don't have some of the worst living conditions in the world for some of our recently migrated. And I think that is a really complex question, because I think we have to rethink what success looks like. And it's not a BMW and 7 houses. You don't need that. You know, you need maybe 100 grand to have a happy life. And I think that would be a really fascinating question to start to see the big businesses take on as well.
Can I just say briefly, I think the very first thing I said tonight was, you know, referred to this Edelman trust barometer that said, you know, basically in the Western world, we're struggling with trust. Funnily enough, in the developing world, they haven't got there yet. And where is the greatest divide or the emerging divide in wealth incomes? It's actually in the West at the moment. And it is not surprising to me at all that many people are voting with their feet in relation to saying, I can't trust an organisation anymore because what has it done for me? I think that my parents or grandparents were better treated in this Western society. So, Jack, I'm with you on that. But I guess all I was saying before is that, you know, at the end of the day, and I'm now speaking on behalf of the larger institutions, but right throughout, non-for-profit, government, corporate, they do get it. They really do get it. And the issue is, you know, they're struggling as to what to do about it. Don't get me wrong, they are. Because I'd actually challenge you on one thing. They feel very vulnerable. They feel very vulnerable. In the morning, there's a social media report on everyone's desk. You know, that's what the world thinks of us.
Yeah, but there's a difference between, you can totally feel vulnerable, and there's a difference between that and needing a $10 million salary. Like, so I think that abundance, that desire for more, that want for that icon which we've been sold in the 50s or the 60s as the great Australian dream or the great American dream, or replace whatever advertiser was successful at the time. I think that is a really, really big fundamental question, is what do we define success as? And if that icon of somebody on $20 million is getting a tough social media report, then that's, yes, a complex set of challenges you have to work on around the brand and around the organisation's worth and around shareholders. But there's something really wrong when that same amount of money could go to lifting up tens of thousands of kids' lives. And so that's complex, I think.
We've got someone else in the audience tonight, Serena Lillywhite, who's the CEO of Transparency International in Australia. I'm interested to hear your observations of this, because Australia's rankings on some of these measures have actually dropped quite significantly, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, Hamish. We conduct a corruption perception index every year, which looks at the perception of corruption in the public sector in 180 countries around the world. And we use a score of 100 being most clean and 0 being most corrupt. And Australia's score of 77 out of 100 sounds like it's quite high, but the worrying thing is that it's dropped 8 points in the last 8 years.
And why is that?
Well, one of the reasons why that's happened, or one of the reasons why countries are perceived to be corrupt, is when you have a situation where governments are increasingly listening to and influenced by the voices of well-connected individuals and special interest groups, lobbyists, for example, and when you have money, big money, flowing into the political system. And so the issue of lobbyists and the fact that our government is really characterised at the moment, I think, by our government's really listening to these well-connected individuals, powerful special interest groups, who are really trying to influence the way policy's made, the way decisions made for their own interests and for businesses' interests. And so you see this, you know, very cosy relationships being established, a culture of mateship, if you like, that can really warp the way decisions are made, and they're not made in the public interest. And then you have revolving doors, people moving straight out the front door of Parliament and onto the company payroll. Okay. And this is really undermining trust.
To how you can regain trust. And Jack, part of the process that you go through with young people in mentoring is trying to establish trust. We don't normally do this, but you've brought a friend tonight.
Yeah, I do. I'll just see if they're here. Yep, they are. Okay.
Who's this?
Hi. I'm Hope. See, I come from a world called imagination. And I was just listening to that video down there. I come from the depths deep below. And I was listening to Simon, great interview, Hamish. And I was thinking, you know, part of how we rebuild it is not giving up on me. Because if you give up on me, I die, and then my world imagination, it starts to become very dark. We've got to be able to imagine the future, imagine what's possible, and build hope into our narrative as well. So that was what I just thought I'd pop up and say, and now I'm going to go. Bye.
Don't go.
I feel like we're all going to join hands by the end of this.
Bringing us back together.
There is a serious point that you're trying to make here, though.
Oh, it's clear. So our job as mentors is to try and unlock the meaning of life, the pathways, and we're working with some of the most marginalised kids around the world now. We've worked with Indigenous kids in Australia for 16 years.
We're talking about tens of thousands of kids.
Yeah, and now we're working in Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, and Zimbabwe, and across 10 locations in the States. And we're really trying to see what is the challenge facing this generation of marginalised kids. And after searching through all these things, the one thing I can land on is imagination. I think imagination gives us the ability to rewrite our story arcs internally.
But what's the connection between imagination and trust?
Well, I think they're a triangle. I think when you have your ability to imagine new realities, you start to be able to make causal jumps from the today to tomorrow. So when you're told again and again that a story, so we're talking specifically about kids for a moment, when you're told again and again that your story arc is always going to be the same way it's always going to be, then that starts to self-perpetuate. The challenge when you're told that life is hopeless again and again, or that a system is broken again and again, is we lose hope. Now, hope allows us to act. Hope is an energy force, and I don't know what the measurement system is. I don't know if there's an index yet. I don't know how you put it into a formula, but I definitely know that when you hear someone with hope in their voice, with spirit, that spirit of hope in the way they're talking, it is electric and it moves like a current throughout us all. And that then I think starts to invoke the ability to understand whether we can trust people. So hope's a world. I lived in America just at the end of when Obama was president, and then we lived under this next president. I think you see, part of my read on it was you see the ramifications of when you go for hope, and no matter what Obama delivered, you're never going to deliver on hope. But man, is it worth fighting for. You know, it doesn't mean you shouldn't back down. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have hope in our narratives. Yes, there's absolutely horrible struggles and challenges we have to work through. Let's find the thread of hope and let's build it. And I think that gives us a chance to overcome some of the most significant challenges we have.